You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, John Cross.
Did you finally figure it out?
No, I pressed the green button and I was there and then you weren't.
Okay.
I was running from the bathroom.
I don't know who you just became, but that was very odd. You were like, I pushed the green button. I don't know who that is.
I'm maturing.
Well, there's so much I feel, not just of the movie, but surrounding the movie and just in general. Some housekeeping or whatever. Hello and welcome to the After Movie Diner. And my guest, not even my guest, my co-host. I don't know why I say my guest. I'm going to start again.
No, I could be the guest.
No,
I was being quiet.
I know,
which is what a guest does, not what a co-host does.
But now you're making it last longer again. Hello and welcome to the After Movie Diner. My co-host, as always, this week is the wonderful and lovely Jim Wallace. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for asking and also having me on the show, despite the fact that I interrupt you all the time.
No, it's fantastic. So, excitement. I have to say, excitement. There's excitement.
Wow. Okay.
The excitement is that Robin from Edinburgh, the man who started the whole shed... stream, the shed stream that we've been going on down. What do I mean? The shed excitement, the shed, the brouhaha. That's an excellent word. The whole shed brouhaha that we have joyfully splashed about in and become embroiled with over these many weeks. I finally reached out to him because, two things. One of our very first listeners, who was a stranger to me but is now a friend, Philip O'Neill from Sweden, he came up in my Facebook memories because he had bought many years ago an After Movie Diner mug, and I asked him about the After Movie Diner mug. I said, is the mug still good? Did you break the mug? Did the image come off in the wash? Whatever. Tell me all about the mug. And he said, I shouldn't have dishwashed it. I put it in the dishwasher, clearly an industrial dishwasher or something, and apparently the image wore off it. And me being just...
Soft touch?
Me being just an incredible podcast host. Let's be fair. Just a phenomenal podcast host.
I mean, not that you need to prove that. I mean, it's happening right now.
No.
but people are listening to it happening live in their ear holes.
I said to him, don't worry, lifetime guarantee with the After Movie Diner. I'll send you out a new mug. And I first asked, do you listen to the podcast in a shed? He said no and laughed, was confused by that. So maybe he stopped listening and he doesn't realize the whole shed thing.
I think he stopped listening, yeah.
I hope you listen to this one. So I said, because we have this new mug, I listen to the After Movie Diner in my shed. That's the new mug. Get yours now on threadless.com.
Very reasonable.
Very reasonable. So I said, would you like this shed-based mug? Despite, I asked him, does he have any friends who has a shed? He was confused by the whole shed thing. Again, leads me to believe maybe he doesn't listen anymore, but I don't care. Lifetime guarantee, I'm sending him a new mug. So I then thought to myself, well, if he gets a mug, Robin, who started the whole shed brouhaha, shed shenanigans,
Shednanigans. There it is.
Robin, who started the whole Shednanigans. He should get a mug. So I reached out to Robin because, what am I if not a wonderful podcast host?
Absolutely.
Who reaches out to his fan and asks about his shed, to which Robin wonderfully not only responded, I would love that, but sent us a picture of the shed. But he sent me an interior shot of his laptop and his keyboard and his fan, because I'm a fan of his fan within the shed. And he said, the podcast is a real achievement. You should be proud. He said it's basically been the three of us in a shed for the year. And I absolutely love it that we've been incorporating the shed-nanigans into the podcast. And he said it makes him smile every time. And he thinks of himself as the shed correspondent, which he should. He should.
He is. He absolutely should.
Yeah. And therefore he should definitely start writing for AfterMovieDiner.com Tales from the Shed. So, Robin, I'm giving you a public call out right now. We require a column. It doesn't have to be weekly, but a monthly column, maybe updates from the shed, tales from the shed, shed-nanigans, the blog, whatever you want to call it. But I'm saying it's all good. He says that he's been mocked by his friends for putting up curtains in the shed. I say no. If you have windows in the shed and you work in the shed, I applaud your curtain putting up.
Absolutely,
sir.
You need curtains. What
Yes.
if there's the sun shining right on you? Very uncomfortable. Curtains, what you need them for.
He sent us pictures of the exterior of the shed as well,
And exterior pictures.
and a photo of his pet chicken. I tell you what, I am a fan of Robin more and more right now. He has a pet chicken. He works in the shed. He says that we should be very proud of our achievement. Sorry. And it's basically been the three of us, you, me, Jim, and him, Robin, in his shed in Edinburgh for the past year. So, Robin, you will be getting an exclusive After Movie Diner. I listen to the After Movie Diner in my shed mug, winging its way to Edinburgh, courtesy of all the shed-nanigans you have created for us here on the diner, because as two expat Brits, whose your brother and my best friend Jim went to Edinburgh University, so we do have an Edinburgh connection.
We do have an Edinburgh connection. We have both been there to visit said Dunderhead. Said
Younger Bumface, Bumface Junior,
who might even have a shed. He might have a shed in his garden, right? Don't they have a shed?
Well, they have I hasten to call it a conservatory. It's more of a lean-to full of. Last time I was there, it was a lean-to full of washing up, but I don't know if it's still that way. I don't know if do they have a shed though? That's a question.
I thought they had a shed. They might. They've definitely
shed.
got like. He built his little girl a dollhouse with his, and it's very what you'd expect a dollhouse built by John to look like.
By John Wallace to look like. And of course, your last name, Wallace, spelt the Scottish way, obviously has a rich Scottish history. So I feel like Robin is right in the ballpark there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It feels inevitable, like fate, mate.
Feels inevitable. So
Fate.
Robin, in your shed in Edinburgh, we applaud thee, and you'll be getting a mug. So how about that? Look, the After Movie Diner, not only keeping one poor Scotsman and his chicken sane in his shed with curtains, his becurtained shed.
Well, I feel very proud that we've been able to do that, mate.
Yeah,
I feel very proud.
Exactly. And we are the podcast that gives back. So people should not forget that. We are the podcast that gives back. And that's what it's all about. So yeah, thank you, Robin. As I say, we applaud you.
Good lad.
We are the podcast that gives back. The other bit of business that I wanted to bring up, a little bit of promotional business, and I hate to be promotional right up front. I hate to thrust the nub of my promotion,
your promotional package
into the ears of our dear listeners.
Your promotional nubbin into our ears.
But I'm exhausted, and one of the reasons I'm exhausted is that I have an album coming out. That's not the reason I'm exhausted. The album is going to be phenomenal. Our good friend Johnny Cole has worked on it.
Good lad.
Hilda Haynix is back for the second album with the Fixtures, doing far more vocals this time round. And our good pal Jay Mayo is, of course, on almost every track with...
a.k.a. the better co-host.
The better co-host. The co-host who does a wonderful job of pretending he's Jim and interrupting me.
He did a great job. He did a great job.
He did a phenomenal job. Hear Jay Mayo on the Diner episode. And Not the diner not after movie diner episode, the episode about the movie Diner.
Sorry, or you know what? Just to be simpler, subscribe to Jay's podcast yourself.
Yes, Hold the Mayo podcast over on patreon.com. But this isn't about Jay Mayo or Hold the Mayo podcast.
No,
although you should absolutely
this is into a whole nest of promotional worms here.
Yes, it is. You should definitely do that thing with Hold the Mayo podcast. I do not mean to shortchange Jay, but we did spend the whole of the Diner episode promoting that.
Mostly talking about that, yeah.
But anyway. And I love Jay Mayo. Jay Mayo is the best. He is, as we would say, the tits. But
it sounds like tits.
It sounds like tits. No, but it's Ritz, but with a T.
I don't think it's spelt T-I-T-Z.
Yeah, with a Z.
Tits.
Tits.
They're all sitting there just saying tits.
I love that this podcast can descend into Big Train sketch reads.
Sorry, everyone. Promotion. Promote that me.
So I'm exhausted. I'll tell you why I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted because we've done this phenomenal album. It's a phenomenal album. I think it is. I think with each album, not only is my songwriting getting really good, but I think that more importantly, the collaboration is really good. And we're sounding effortlessly like a band, as if we were all in the same room. Case in point, there was a phenomenal thing where I sent what I thought to be an almost finished, like me version or demo version of a song, because that's what I do. Is I tend to record the song as I would do it if it was just me, with all the instruments I can do and lay on it, and then I kind of send it out there and go, if my contributors contribute to it, great. If they don't, this version will be fine. That's kind of the way I do it. And I sent this one track out, and Johnny, who with every passing album he plays on has become more and more this amazing sounding board and wonderfully bold in his choices and decisions and stuff. He was like, I don't know if you mind, old chap, but I actually hear this song that you've done as a sort of indie rock tune. I hear it as a ballad. Would you mind if I had a go at it as a ballad? He did it, worked out the piano part, even though I didn't send him any music or anything. He just worked out the piano part from the version I had. While at the same time, Hilda was saying to me, like, I would love to take lead vocals on that track. Would you mind if I do lead vocals? Neither of them had spoken to each other, separate of each other. Hilda sent me a lead vocal track for that song, thinking I would just lay it over my vocals or remove my vocals and lay on hers. And then Johnny sent me this piano thing, and I was like, I don't know if it's a piano ballad or whatever. I put his piano piece and her vocals together, and like, it's absolute magic.
Let's make a film about nothing. Let's fall in love all over again. To be back in the rooms with the sticky floor.
Neither of them spoke to each other about it. It's like, it's this weird thing. So anyway, we're all gelling as a band. It's super exciting. It's wonderful. And I love the album. I'm exhausted because we're releasing it on March 5th, and I'm about 3 or 4 days into the 2-week run up of social media promotion for the album. Doing some images on my Instagram, doing some tweets about it, doing some Facebook posts about it, all that kind of stuff. And I'm already exhausted because I know the album's good. I know that when it comes out, people will listen to it or they won't. And I know that when the album comes out, there'll be even more promotion I'll have to do for it, and I'll have to do some interviews and some other stuff like that because I just want to get it out there. But I'm already exhausted because I feel like I've already put some stuff out there, and while some of it is getting interest, other bits of it isn't getting interest. And I know that I'm staring down 2 weeks of doing that thing where you put stuff out online, and even though you're really nice about it, and even though you're really lovely about it, and even though you say share, and even though you say like, and even though you tell people that the algorithm is against us and the only way to make it work is if you interact with the post in some way, I just know that I'm staring down 2 weeks, and even after the album comes out, even more weeks of stuff not being interacted with. And it's just exhausting. It's especially exhausting when you know how good it is, and I don't say that as any ego to myself. I'm talking about the fact that these amazing collaborators have got together, done some incredible work for free, for nothing, just because they're really into it, like I'm really into it. And the album is being released on March 5th. So all I would say is please, if you follow me on the socials, at Misc Plumfix, which is MISCPLUMBFIX, on Twitter, on Instagram, and Facebook. I think it's facebook.com Misc Plumbing Fixtures. I think. Let me just check that. But if you do follow me on the socials, please just be a mensch, as they say. Just be a mensch. And if you see something, like and share. Costs you nothing. Just like and share. So that's it. It just gets exhausting doing a lot of promotion and really it not amounting to much. And it's not a hard luck story. Like some people listening to it might be like, well, don't put out albums then. Like, just stop it. And I totally understand that. There are people who may have heard my older albums who may be saying like, just stop it. And maybe I should. But I am really, really genuinely proud of this one. And I think that people have done awesome work. And I think it's work that needs to be noticed. So if you're a listener to the After Movie Diner, please also follow Misc Plumfix. And even if you don't buy the album or listen to the album or stream the album on Spotify or care for my music at all, just like and share the post. Just like and share the post. It really just fucking helps. It helps so much. And I will do the same for you. If you're a creative out there, as Jim can attest, as other people can attest, if you are a creative out there, I am a liking and sharing madman. So I will do that for you. So that's all I wanted to say. It's exhausting trying to do promotion. So as I have this tiny platform with a loyal listener base, please just help a brother out and be a mensch. That's all I wanted to say. Also, Jim, because Johnny is on the album so much, I cannot wait for you to hear it, dude. I really cannot wait for you to hear it. I think of all the stuff that I've done, you're going to be really happy and impressed with this one. I really do. I genuinely feel that way.
Well, I can't wait to hear it, mate. I can't wait to hear it. And I feel your pain as somebody who long since gave up promoting their stuff, because who cares? It can be very tiring. The poetry book was exhausting, and everybody was really kind and lovely and bought it. But at a certain point, you realise, I guess that's it. I guess that, like, there's no. Yeah, you reach a point where you think, well, I guess no one else is gonna get it. You know, I've basically begged everyone I know. So that would be that then.
Every single time I post the podcast on aftermoviediner.com.
No, I've noticed. That's very cool.
There is a link to your website, and the main banner ad on the homepage of aftermoviediner.com is for your book. And on Bandcamp Friday, last Bandcamp Friday,
I've noticed that too.
I promoted your music, and I will be doing it again. March 5th is the next Bandcamp Friday. So not only should you pick up the latest Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures album, which will be called I've Been There. That's what it's called. I would strongly urge all of the listeners on Bandcamp Friday to support J.E.A. Wallace.
I think my recommendation there would be, if anybody does want to try anything, they should try The Heist, which is you and me doing an album together, and that was a lot of fun. And the music on there, I think, has really stood the test of time, and it's, you know, some of the most fun I've ever had making an album. It was just really great. So yeah, try The Heist, and that's up on like 9 albums or something. So just go for The Heist.
That's up on your Bandcamp, right?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So Bandcamp, and is it jeawallace.bandcamp.com?
By the way, it's bloody free. It's free.
What's free?
The heist to download.
No, pay. You can pay what you want, though, right?
Yeah, you can pay what you want, but
Yeah,
I'm just saying you don't even have to do that. You can download it for free and listen to it.
So two things. Is it jeawallace.bandcamp.com?
Yeah.
jeawallace.bandcamp.com. I will post it on After Movie Diner. But also, don't get it for free. Chuck him $3 or $4. Chuck him $10.
At this point,
it's an album.
It's fine. I have resigned. I got a poem published the other day. I'm not going to tell you any more about it. Well, I got paid a small amount of money.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is very exciting. But it'll be very exciting when I can tell you where it's published. But I have realised that I don't think I have broken 3 figures in terms of the money that I've made out of all the poems I've had published and the book that I've had published and all the sales. I haven't broken 3 figures yet.
Okay, so forget Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures on Bandcamp Friday.
No.
Hang on. On Bandcamp Friday, let's break 3 figures for Jim Wallace's music.
No. I don't want that.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
I want people to like and share. What's the name of the album?
I've been there.
I've been there. Okay, because I know that's been like
the running
common theme.
Hashtag I've been there.
Hashtag I've been
there. Because it works 2 ways, right? Because on one way you're saying I've been there. In other words, there is a location, there is a place that you have been, but also it's what someone says when they're being empathetic. You know, I've been there.
That's true. That's very true. I like that. I hadn't actually spotted the second part,
right?
But I'm sure that would have become clear to me had I listened to the album.
And the other thing that I've been doing,
I would be washed in musical empathy,
is it says I've been there, but I've also been saying where have you been, and there's 2 ways to say that. There's where have you been, meaning like, come on, catch up, where have you been? But there's also where have you been? Where have you traveled to in the world?
Right.
And so the album, and in fact, the music video that I'm working on right now for the album, twin themes of global and empathy, which I feel like at this particular time, very hot themes. I mean, very hot. Thematically,
you've touched some hot buttons there.
Thematically hot buttons.
Yeah, those buttons are thematically hot.
Yes. So anyway, I just wanted to say that on the get-go. So last week, we covered last week on the After Movie Diner.
Last week on the potentially libelous After Movie Diner, if Stephen King ever heard what we had to say.
No, I was quoting him. He literally said that he was on all of the cocaine. Like he said that in an interview.
Oh, okay. I feel better now.
He also disowned the movie. And I made that clear last episode that that's something he said himself. It's not libelous. It's out there on the internet. It is something that is part of the IMDb trivia. However, last week on the After Movie Diner, we talked about catastrophic yet weirdly fascinating and mildly enjoyable mishap of moviedom, Maximum Overdrive, and so we asked the question at the end of that episode: is it King or Estevez? Is it King or Estevez? Is it Stephen King or Estevez? Well, I put a poll out on Twitter because I'm rather hot in the meme sphere or whatever it is.
What was it again? Pretty heavy in the meme sphere.
As I'm pretty heavy in the meme sphere, I put out a poll on Twitter because that's what all the young whippersnappers are doing these days.
That's what they're doing on
polls
social
are
media.
Hot polls are very hot.
Oh, they are
viral. They're so hot. They've got a fever because they're viral polls. Well, this poll went viral to the tune of 14 people. And
wow.
14 people responded, Stephen King. It's definitely Stephen King. However, there were, I believe, 2 votes for Estevez. So there is a small Estevez contingent.
So Emilio Estevez and his aunt.
Yes. So who are very, very invested in what a podcast that no one's heard of is covering this week. However, we are covering a Stephen King film. And when I just said to Jim, what Stephen King film do you want to do? He came back with Christine. It wasn't until about an hour into Christine that I suddenly realized, first of all, last week's movie was a Stephen King story about cars and trucks and driving things trying to kill people. And this week's story is a Stephen King thing, all about a car that's trying to kill people, with all the sort of 50s nostalgia that King loves to splash about and soup deliberately all over it. So there is some nice themes emerging there.
We're naturally drawn towards themes, even when we don't know we're doing it.
Even when we don't know that we're doing it.
That's how talented a podcaster you are, mate.
It is.
The themes just run naturally.
But it also dawned on me, I have not, considering he is top 3 directors for me of all time, I have not covered a lot of John Carpenter on the podcast. We've done way back when, I think on the second ever episode, me and my friend Phil had a very rambling conversation about Kurt Russell films in which we talked about The Thing briefly. And me and Marcus went to see Prince of Darkness at, what's it called? Not Film Forum. No, the other one in the West Village. That's name is escaping me because I literally haven't been in the West Village. No, the one IFC Center. The IFC Center. We went and saw Prince of Darkness and we covered it on the podcast. But apart from that, and we our collaborator Michael Campuchiaro has written about a couple of his things on the website. But in terms of podcasting, this is, if you count the Phil episode, this is the 3rd John Carpenter film we have talked about. If you want whole episodes that are just about one film, this is only the 2nd John Carpenter movie that we have.
Yeah, I suppose that's a comment on for us. I guess we usually try and, when we went to the movies, we would try and see new movies, or like if there was like a retrospective or something, like a 20th anniversary. I feel like, I guess Carpenter's a bit too old for that. Like there's no like 20th anniversary or something, because it's actually not that recent. You know, like this film is what, 43 years old? No,
this film is younger than I am. This film came out in 1983.
Oh, because it had 78 as the...
It's set in
78, right?
But yeah, no, it's set in 78, but it came out in 83.
Okay.
So that would make this movie 38 years old.
Why is it set 5 years earlier? I don't understand. What's the point in that?
I've no idea, but probably to make it 20 years since Christine came off the assembly. Because Christine comes off the assembly line on September 57. That's when that's when George LeBay's brother bought Christine, was in September 57. And the movie takes place in 78. So yeah, it's 20 years, I guess, of Christine, I guess is the point.
For no reason. So in other words, there's no reason.
I don't believe there's much of a reason, no. I mean, it certainly wasn't like, it's not like one of those movies that was filmed back in 78 and sat on the shelf. It's just, it is what it is. So yeah.
Sorry, I could have asked the world's most boring question about that movie.
So yes, what are we talking about? Christine, right?
Christine, mate.
No, so one of the reasons
talking about the movie.
One of the reasons I think we haven't done a lot of John Carpenter movies is I feel like when you love something, and especially when you love something that is at this point pretty universally loved and pretty universally
you're not being controversial saying The Thing is very good, isn't it?
Right.
All The Thing's good.
Right. And no one's interested in someone going, when The Thing came out, it wasn't popular. There's nothing to be said about John Carpenter that hasn't already been said. So I kind of keep my...
Halloween's very scary, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. I mean, we talked about Halloween 2018, and therefore we brought up the Halloween franchise sort of in conjunction with that, or in
how to
context
make a
with that.
better Halloween movie.
Yeah, do anything but Halloween 2018 is how you make a better. Although that'll piss off the guy who was listening to us and wrote a review.
Oh yeah, I saw the review. There was like negative Nicks we were called.
Yeah. Well, he was like, I can't believe they didn't like Halloween 2018. I've stopped listening. I'm like, okay.
No, but it was more like they were really nice, and it's a good podcast. I like it, but they went too far with Halloween 2018 to like negative Nicks. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Listen,
you saw
mate.
that movie, right?
Listen, mate. If you want a podcast praising and filleting Halloween 2018, you can spit and hit a billion of them.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's
If you
one
want a
in the meat,
that's gonna enjoy crappy cash-in remakes with zero imagination, then fucking have at it. But don't come here for your oral ice cream. Get your comfort elsewhere.
Indeed.
This is nut-filled truth.
it is. But I feel like I have, and hopefully you do as well, some stuff to say about Christine.
Yes.
And hopefully it won't be just endless
I like the
talking
with the
about.
car.
Yeah, right. I like that the car's red. Red's a very good colour for the car.
Red's a good colour. It's scary.
I just feel like Christine has some stuff to say about it. And listen, I'm perfectly open to covering John Carpenter movies. I'm more interested in covering Carpenter movies that other people aren't talking about as much. Like Starman, I think, would make a really interesting podcast. And like Village of the Damned would make a really interesting podcast, because Village of the Damned is one of those things where you look at it and you go, I know it's John Carpenter and it's got a great cast, and I know it's a remake, but it's he's trying to do a thing with it, and it could be relatively interesting, but it is interminably dull, and I just can't put my finger on why it's so dull, and it would make an interesting dissection to find out why it's so dull.
Well, if I might very quickly just say,
we've also covered John Carpenter's Elvis, which is technically a TV show, or a miniseries, technically not a movie, but we have covered that on the podcast with Jay Mayo. Anyway, sorry, Jim, go back to what you were saying.
That's right. Just for more John Carpenter related stuff, John, my brother, your best friend, on his website,
yes.
he's a famous writer.
Famous writer is John Wallace.
Books.
It's John Wallace. Buy the books.
But he is also he's written reviews, really entertaining, funny, interesting reviews of most John Carpenter films at this point. He's sort of working his way through the Carpenterography.
Yeah, and he did it for his website instead of my website, which is a movie website.
That's true. He did. Well, he's trying to promote his own stuff, not your stuff.
Right.
I don't know if it was exactly a roaring success, but then, what is? But I'm just saying, if you're interested, it's there and it's great.
And it is. And his website is johnwallace.co. And it's John
I know
J.
you think he's forgotten the UK, but he hasn't.
He hasn't.
He's not forgotten the UK.
He's not forgotten the UK. So it's johnwallace.co. And that's John, Jon, spelt my way, not spelt with an H. So johnwallace.co. Check out his website as well. We're telling you to do a lot of things, and that's fine. We should be telling you to do a lot of things because you're in a pandemic. What are you doing? Sitting around in your sweatpants, eating hummus and posting memes.
You've got to do something in the shed in between chicken feeds, right?
Well, I wasn't insinuating that Robin is sat around in sweatpants eating
Nor was
hummus.
I was merely saying
I was
when
saying,
you're in a shed and you don't have to feed the chicken immediately.
Right, I think Robin is going to be checking it out. I have no doubt that Robin is a loyal checker-outer. I'm saying that those worthless layabouts, the other 59 listeners who are all worthless layabouts, they should check it out. That's what I'm saying. They're lying around eating hummus and posting memes, and I'm saying stop posting memes, put the hummus down, and go over to johnwallace.co and read his reviews of John Carpenter films. I probably should have read his review of Christine
I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I watched the film
before I did
with
this.
an entirely blank slate, knowing only one thing, that Stephen King did not like the movie.
What? Stephen King doesn't like any movie made of his stuff unless it's Mick Garris. And what's hilarious about that is, and no disrespect to Mick Garris, if he is ever a future guest on the After Movie Diner, but Mick Garris's stuff, the best of it is the Stand miniseries, and that's about it. That's the best.
Only half of that. If we're honest, Stephen King only likes people when they make movies of his books that are straight adaptations. And actually, the only genuinely good versions of his movies are ones where people take liberties, like The Shining and Christine.
Right. So, yes. So we haven't talked a lot about John Carpenter, so it's a bit exciting. And maybe we'll do more in the future. And I was thinking to myself, is there an Emilio Estevez movie to complete a trilogy in which cars attack people? Because
no. Well, what about I was going to say, what about Repo Man, which I've never seen, and that's got Harry Dean Stanton in it as well, doesn't it? Or am I crazy?
Oh my goodness, Repo Man would complete this trilogy.
It would, right?
Yeah, it would in a weird way.
Isn't the car like? I know it's not like killing people, but isn't there a car kind of central to the story, kind of?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. Repo Man would kind of work as a. Oh, okay. So next week we're covering Repo Man.
Okay, cool. I've never seen it either. So great.
Oh my goodness, there are all sorts of themes bouncing around this trilogy of wonder. So there we go. Look at this right here. We're doing Maximum Overdrive to Christine to Repo Man. It's a natural progression, people.
Yeah, of course.
Sky's the limit after that.
To be honest, I'm a bit worried that we are just traveling that well-worn podcast theme of Estevez King season. It's like, at what point do you just admit that it's all been done?
Yeah, it's all been
in
done.
The Estevez King season arena.
So, Jim, were you a Christine newbie? Was this your first viewing of Christine?
So, two things.
Yes.
One, yes and no. In that, I've never seen the movie, but I had read the book.
Okay. Well, right, but okay. So you're not a newbie to the story, but you're a newbie to okay,
the movie. Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about the movie. Okay. I have some things I want to say, but I would like to hear your. If people don't know, a guy who is a nerd at school gets a 50s car that is a Plymouth. And it starts to kill people and take him over in some way, making him like cool, but in the same time more aggressive and dickish. There is a girlfriend. He has a best friend who's a football player. Someone takes a crap on his dashboard. Christine's magic. They run over it with a steamroller. That's kind of the movie, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Not a steamroller, a digger. Sorry.
Yeah, digger. So I think what's most interesting to me is why Stephen King doesn't like the movie, is why I like the movie. Like, me and Steve could not be more polar opposites on the question of Christine, good or bad, right? Because, so the thing about Stephen King is, if I can just give you a very brief history of Stephen King, is that up to a certain point in his career, arguably, actually, it's sort of, the problem has started infecting his book backwards, but he always had a problem with endings, right? That his setups were great. The atmosphere was, menacing and scary and horrifying and weird and confusing, but at the same time, very involving and evocative and, really grabbed you and took you into the story. And then at a certain point, because he used to write, basically, he talked about in his book on writing, he talks about, at a certain point in his career, he felt like he was sort of, when he was writing at this big desk, that he was on like a rolling ship in a storm, and he was like barely holding onto the desk as he like pumped out the writing and the pages were flying off. Like, that's how he wrote, and it comes across like that, right? But at a certain point in his book, he's like, right, fuck, I have to end this. Like, this has to end. And so either, right, you just keep writing until it stops, and then you end up with something that doesn't really work, or you end up trying to kind of tie everything together, and end up with sort of basically an unsatisfying ending. And that's what Stephen King used to do all the time. His endings were rubbish, right? Everything was really, really great, and then right at the end, in his attempt to tie everything up and like give it a good ending, it was always rubbish. Now, Christine is basically the movie, right? I don't think it differs all that much in that, exactly like you're saying, a nerd gets a car, something about the car, his personality starts changing, he starts to become more aggressive, more cool, right? More like the man he wants to be, but there's this sort of underlying toxicity about it, right? It's obviously not good for him, despite him becoming the person he's always wanted to be. It's like obviously kind of slightly eating him from the inside out, and he's sort of almost turning into somebody else. And all the time there's this car, right? And all the way through the movie, there's the feeling of this car being cursed, right? And infectious and diseased and, you know, destructive and corrupting. And in the end of the book, and it might be one of the first times I've ever like rolled my eyes at an ending in a kind of a knowing way, like, well, are you kidding, right? Because I was a young teenager when I read my Stephen King, and I don't remember ever being anything other than taking stories at their face value. You know what I mean? Like, it's a story. I don't get involved in, oh, I wouldn't have taken it there. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's just It's a thing. It's complete. Right. You don't question it.
No.
But that's the first time I remember rolling my eyes because something had happened that I was unsatisfied with, that I felt like, no. And in the book, right at the end, there's like a ghost basically appears in the car, kind of, and it's the old, like the guy that killed himself, right? Or at least in the film kills himself, like the old owner of the car, the
brother of the kind of hobo dude who sells him the car in the first place. Yeah,
right. So I think it's kind of. It becomes apparent, and again, I was a young teenager, so maybe I missed some of the signs, but it was clear that what was menacing and scary and weird about the book was this car, this idea that this car was a fucking killer, and it was fucking like, you know, it was a haunted car and was like corrupting somebody, taking them over. Like, that was what was scary. And the idea that no, it's just a ghost has been driving around the whole time and the bloke's been turning into the ghost. Like, that's rubbish. That's a rubbish explanation of what's going on. A ghost has been driving the car around. Are you kidding? So the idea of John Carpenter going, I like the book, but the ghost bit is rubbish. I'm going to get rid of the ghost, and instead it will be an actual haunted car, and the car will corrupt the bloke from the inside out, and that'll be the fucking movie, right? And Stephen King did not like this, obviously, because he's very precious, and understandably, he probably didn't arrive at that, you know, that conclusion lightly, and he probably feels that, you know, ghosts driving cars, and that's sensible. Now, for me, and this is, I'm going to stop talking in a minute, but for me, what I like about the movie is I find the concept of people being corrupted by their possessions to the point of them becoming toxic and poisonous and like something else, like that their whole personality is taken over by this possession, I think is more common and more interesting than people being possessed by ghosts who like cars. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not an interesting subject to me. No. People being possessed by ghosts who drive cars is not like, there's too many ghosts fucking driving cars around. That's the problem with America. You know what I mean? It's like, what's even the metaphor, King? What are you talking about? Yeah. Whereas, like, the idea of bloke being corrupted by materialism in America feels like, well, that, you know, I'm not saying it's like, oh, how strokey beard deep, but at least it's like something relatable and feels like something to talk about. And it feels like, you know, with that premise, and this is why I liked it so much. What I liked about it was, and I don't really know the reputation of the movie all that well. I don't think it's like considered a classic or anything, but I liked that Carpenter's like stripped back style, right? Which is what he brings to stuff. When you've got like, if you're going to strip the book of Christine down to its like essential parts and what makes it an effective and like spooky story, and you get Carpenter to film it in his like stripped back lean way, like there's no fucking fat on this movie at all. He's got no interest in anything apart from like just telling that story. I thought it worked really well, and there was like a couple of bits in it that were properly took my breath away. They were so cool and great and weird, and just like, I'm never going to forget the guy running down the road being chased by a flaming car. I'm never going to forget that. That image alone is going to be in my brain forever. I'm going to remember that.
So my big overriding thing about Christine is that it's, and I could probably find other cases, but it's certainly the most obvious case I can think of in all the movies that I've watched, where despite of everything, almost despite of the subject matter, definitely despite the script, which we'll get onto in a minute, and despite the somewhat ludicrous scenario, and despite lack of money and studio bollocks and all the and almost despite the cast, although the cast do squeak by, certainly the two leads are pretty decent, and I love all the little weirdo older mad men that he fills the movie with. But despite a lot of things, the movie is successful purely because of John Carpenter. Keith Gordon, to be fair, considering it's Keith Gordon and he's not the most charismatic or enigmatic leading man, is bloody good in the movie. He does give the movie his beans, right? And his immediate supporting cast, what's her name from wasn't she in Baywatch? She was also in she was also in Dragnet. She's the Virgin Connie Swales, who is Alexandra Paul, and John Stockwell. They're fine. They're absolutely fine. Neither of them are terrible, but neither of them are particularly interesting either. They're fine. They are the definition of fine. They're not stinking up the joint, but they're not like...
Don't forget the bloke who spits out the chewing gum after getting electrocuted in Ghostbusters.
Well, he's in there as well. Yes, indeed. Yeah. As one of the thugs, Stephen Tash, his name is, which means he should have grown a huge mustache, and the fact that he never did is kind of unforgivable. But what I mean to say is that, like you say, it sounds like and I haven't read the book, but it sounds like the book kind of disappears up its own need for Stephen King to have, something supernatural happening outside of just a demonic car or a possessed car or an evil car or whatever. So despite the source material and despite the script, which the script, meaning the dialogue, the script in Christine is mostly awful. And it's mostly awful for one big reason. And the one big reason is that, and it's twofold. It's to do with the studios, but this is the reason if you want to follow the through line, right? So before this movie comes out, John Carpenter makes, The Thing, right? And The Thing comes out, and because of the effects and everything in it, and the gore in it and the violence and everything else, people go apeshit. Like, people just go fucking apeshit, and they're like, "He is the pornographer of violence." There's a huge
Well, I didn't know that.
It comes off the back of E.T., right? So E.T. There's a famous E.T. and The Thing come out the same year, and the nice, cute little alien that looks like a turd that rides a floating bike wins instead of the incredibly, intelligent and tense and weird and groundbreaking and, beautifully shot The Thing with a phenomenal cast. That gets just fucking shit on from a great height, right? So, and you see it in the rest of his movies very interestingly. Not that he was ever one for gore. It's something else that people miss. It's Halloween and Assault on Precinct 13 and even The Fog. A lot of these movies, they don't have geysers of blood splashing everywhere. The whole point about them is their atmosphere and their tension. The Thing is graphic for its own reasons, and it's graphic because technology had got to a point where he felt like he could show something interesting and twisted and weird and whatever. But, you know, even in The Thing, it's not so much like gore as it is, you know, creature feature kind of effect. But The Thing gives John Carpenter a reputation as, and he was literally labeled the pornographer of violence. Like, that's what they called him after that.
That's crazy.
Movie. Yeah. So because of that, he goes the opposite of Maximum Overdrive, which is like, well, if cars are going to be killing people, there better be guys with blood splashing everywhere. Carpenter goes fairly low key in terms of gory deaths, right? Most of the deaths you don't even see, and the few deaths that you do, there's no bloodletting. And I think it's for that reason. I think because the two movies that come after The Thing are this movie, which he doesn't produce, doesn't write, barely scores. His score is in there, but it's not like crazy. And was sort of a job for hire, kind of a job for hire. And then after that, Starman, which again, I don't think he writes Starman, but again was his attempt to be like, I can make a sweet movie. Like Christine and Starman are him trying to say, I can make movies about characters. Like the movies I make are about characters. They're not about horror or genre or whatever. I actually tell really interesting stories about characters if you could just look past, you know, the horror or the sci-fi or whatever. You know, and then he goes back to Big Trouble in Little China and Prince of Darkness and They Live and stuff that he wrote and he owns, and they're more, or you know, more his autonomous stuff. So Christine, the way that it is, first of all, I think he doesn't want to do too much gore in it. Not that there isn't violence, but too much gore in it. But then the second thing that happens is the studio says, because at the time the studio wanted a Stephen King movie by John Carpenter, and we want it to be a hard R, right? They do not want it to be a PG movie. They want it to be a hard R. And when they say they want it to be a hard R, the screenwriter goes, okay, I'm going to put a lot of swearing in it. Like that was the screenwriter's answer to making it a hard R, was I'm going to put a lot of swearing in it. And right off the bat, the swearing is grating. It only gets more grating as it goes along. It's one of those rare occasions where swearing in the movie feels like disingenuous. Most of the time, swearing in movies is done, you know, either out of shock value, like it happens very infrequently, so when it does happen, it kind of nails you to the wall, or it's done in sort of a comedic or Tarantino-esque or Eddie Murphy-esque or whatever, like part of the comedy, part of the braggadocio, part of the rhythm of the piece, right? This movie has neither thing, and in fact, the swearing feels horribly out of place. It would be, you make this a much better movie, and it gets 1 more point out of 10 if you remove the swearing from it. The only time the swearing should have encroached as he became more of a dick. The first time he says fuck should be when he says it to his parents. That fuck you that he says to his mum should be the shock value. It should be, oh my God, I can't believe this movie went there kind of thing. But it's not, right, because people are C-wording and F-wording all over the shop before we even get to that scene. And it ruins that scene with the parents to some extent, and it takes the edge off it. So that's why I say that the script is not very good. And even outside of the swearing, the dialogue is not particularly phenomenal. It's not leaping off the page. There are a couple of great scenes where dialogue is concerned, or where performances and the words kind of match. One is the scene with the old man who sells him the car, and the other one is the scene with Harry Dean Stanton outside the school, with Harry Dean Stanton sat on Christine and kind of questioning Keith Gordon. So saying all that, The reason why this movie is so good is John Carpenter, and he uses a lot of tricks that he's used in other things, but the main trick is which is the trick he comes from Halloween, which is don't explain. It doesn't need explanation. The car's evil. Period. Boom. Whatever. Michael Myers is the living.
That's highly approved of, by the way. I am all about. I don't need to hear about the ancient fucking curse put on the car because the car was built on, do you know what I mean, a pyramid that was exported. But I don't need to flashback to, do you know what I mean, fucking Munich 1864 or whatever. You know what I mean? And there's a car in a hood or something. It's I don't need any of that.
No.
Just, is the car evil? Fine. Can we get the fuck on with it?
Can we get on with it?
No, because the only reason that's first seen there is because they're remember, if the car ever gets out, read the book with the hat on or whatever. And you go, but make sure you've got the right hat. And then right at the end, they go, oh no, the hat's been blown off. How are we going to, fuck off with your hat and your book. Get fucking knotted. Jesus.
It's just evil, period.
That's what's great about this. It's how are we going to destroy that? Run it over with a bulldozer. All right, I'll just do that then.
This is why Stephen King doesn't like the movie. It's not that it changed. It's not that it changes from the book. It's that. No, it is that it changes from the book, but it's the way I imagine Stephen King experiencing the movie, right? So him and Carpenter are whatever, and they go along. In fact, Carpenter didn't go to the premiere, but let's say they go along to a screening, right? They sit down, and at the very opening sequence that Carpenter puts in the movie, that is entirely an invention of Carpenter's. It's not anybody else's.
There's no way that's in the book. It wouldn't work.
He says in the DVD extras, he's we started showing it off because we wanted it to be no, the car came off the plant evil. The car, that's what it is. The car attacks two guys actually who are working on it on the plant. It's not about, whatever. So you can imagine Stephen King sitting down to watch the movie, and within the first 30 seconds, he's like, no.
he's incandescent with rage.
His head, all he can do is go, oh, they've ruined it. He's not watching the movie anymore. The first minute of the film, he's like, wait, what is this flashback to the 50s on the production plant? And why are we seeing that? No, wait, no. And then he sees the hood come down and crush the guy's hand. He's like, oh no, he's bollocksed it. And then he's watching the rest of the movie with that going in his mind.
What I like too is he's like, oh, they've made it shallow. They've taken away all the depth. So just to be clear, evil car shallow, ghost driving car, that's depth.
That's fine. That's
depth.
That's
depth. That's depth, Steve.
Yeah.
Get on your bike.
On your bike. If we continue to do Stephen King films, what we might find out is that Stephen King's a bit crap.
He's not. He's a terrific writer.
He is a terrific writer.
The way that it's often the case that because I've learned this from John. There's two ways to write a book. You either do it the way that King does it, which is you start and then you work it out as you go, and then you reach a certain point where you have to end it, and you do your best to tie it up, and there you go. There's your book. Those books tend to be really involving. You get taken along on a roller coaster, right? But you can sometimes be left at the end with a bit nah, that was a bit pat or neat or whatever. Just as it doesn't quite tie all the ends together, right? That's quite common. Or you get the thing that's intricately plotted and all fits together perfectly and everything works, and you're like, wow. But that book probably took them 10 years to write, and it'll be the only good book they ever write. Everything else they write will be shit.
Yeah.
There's a few honourable exceptions to this. And they are truly great writers, but those tend to be the pattern. And King is very definitely a great writer, but
either that or your Agatha Christie or Arthur Conan Doyle, and you find a formula and you beat that formula.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's for that kind of a thing, for your kind of a throws. But to be fair to King, he's not formulaic, and I think what's fun about him and what resonates about his is, to be fair to him, that even though it's ghost driving a car, it's not just it's an evil car and it attacks teenagers and that's it. He's interested in why and what's going on. And I'm sure there's something about like the evil of people, because the guy who like haunts the car or whatever, like Mr. Ghost Driver, is like a really evil fucking dude. And I think the idea there is like people's evil doesn't just disappear, right? Like it lives on in either other people, right? I mean, it doesn't just like, evil people don't just die and then they disappear. Like there's something there about, again, like tapping into some something. What's unique about America is even when King was writing, it's a relatively young country, and the idea that's like definitely coming true now is that, hey, you know, you did those fucked up things as a country like 20 years ago. Yeah, they're now fucking, they're going to come, they don't just disappear because you're America. You don't just get to walk away from that shit. You know what I mean? Like, just because bad people die doesn't mean the evil shit they do died with them. So there's something there, right? To be fair to him, it's just when
the evil that you do will live after you. Don't cry, Caesar. To quote the Julius Caesar, William Shakespeare inspired rap that William Shatner does at the end of the movie Free Enterprise.
Fucking dude, I take my imaginary hat off to your ability to weave in absolutely perfect but incredibly obscure cultural references that only I get.
Yeah, that's what it is. Literally,
that was one of the joys of you know, like there's moments in life where you go, it does not get any better than this. And for me, it was watching Free Enterprise with you in that flat in Edgware Road.
Yes,
it was just like, I remember that night as being like, this is the perfect movie for us in this place at this time.
Yes.
It does not get any better than that somebody made this movie and we're watching it.
And we're watching,
you know, anyway, Free Enterprise.
And now I follow the maker of that movie on Twitter.
Nice. We should talk to them.
Maybe.
Interview them.
Yeah, maybe.
And now it's an annoying advert break. Sorry.
Anyway, the point being is that he is a great writer, but he's not terribly good with endings.
Yes.
Because of the way he writes, and I think that's part of the strength of why he writes, because it comes from this like deep, mad place, and trying to apply narrative logic to that can obviously come off as like pat and force, because that's what you're doing. At a certain point, you're being like honest and just like, where do I think this is going to go? And whatever decisions you make are representative and reflective of something dark and like maybe not quite fully known about yourself.
And
the moment you try and tie it off is the moment that you're like messing with that and spoiling it. So it's understandable, but you need to finish a book. You can't just keep writing. But it's also clearly true that he's very, and again, I can understand that, but he's very precious about his books, because I think people have made lousy adaptations of his books. But the fact that he's most vociferous about The Shining is like, I don't think you get about what it is about your books that's scary. You know, he thinks it's the mythology, and it's not. It's the atmosphere, and it's how they make people feel. It's not the story.
It's because we need to. This is the thing. The best stuff that is made of Stephen King stuff tends to be inspired by. Like, he needs to start thinking of it as rather than an adaptation of his work, like a book to screen adaptation. It's inspired by. Like, The Shining is inspired by Stephen King's The Shining. It's Stanley Kubrick's The Shining because it's not Stephen King's The Shining. It's John Carpenter's Christine because it's not Stephen King's Christine.
If I go with it, because I think you're totally right. I think that's exactly what I think of it. If I could go one further, I'd also say that Stephen King doesn't really get what it is that people love about his books. And there's two things that Stephen King does when he writes, at least these books. There's the like mad darkness that he's like channeling onto the page that he doesn't really understand, but for whatever reason really floats people's boats. And then afterwards, after that's happened, he then has to do a lot of hard work in applying a story and a reason and narrative logic and characters and all that mythology that's like, yeah, that makes sense now. And the darkness has like structure and there's a story to it, and that makes sense. And so what he wants from the movies is he wants reflective of the hard work he put in, right? The hard work is what matters. The fact that Danny has The Shining and that he gets taught this is like, that's all the hard work he had to do to explain the dark mad shit he came up with, a bloke going nuts in a hotel in the middle of winter, right? That's what fucking freaks people out. So when Kubrick makes the movie, and in this case, Carpenter makes Christine with the car, they're honing in on what is actually scary and really grabs people about the story. And what he wants is, no, my hard work needs to be up there on the screen, not the dark, mad shit that I'd rather not think about, thanks, right? And I get that, but that you're wrong. Like,
and not
that's
to
not
be...
That's not why your books are good, mate. It's not, the bollocks.
Right, indeed. And not to be very similar to Cunningham and slowly become a massive ego fueled nightmare on this particular podcast, although maybe that ship has sailed.
I feel like the both of us there, mate.
Yeah, it's not unlike, to bring it back to what I was talking about, my album at the beginning, it's not unlike when I'm writing a song, the hardest part for me is the chorus. Because when I think about it, I go, well, shit, the chorus has to tie all this together. The chorus has to first of all, very often when you're writing a song, and in the case of Stephen King writing a book, you don't necessarily want to hit the nail on the head. You don't want the chorus that goes, oh, by the way, this song is about this. Very often I like to write stuff that is both incredibly specific, but could be taken to mean multiple things. And I don't even do it on purpose. I just do it kind of instinctively. But the choruses are the hardest things because you're like, well, it needs to have a hook, right? It needs to have that catchy boom, and it needs to somehow combine these disparate ideas that make up the verses into something that is about something. And it's the hardest thing because I think, like King, I write instinctively. So I tend to scribble down the verses, really like the verses, and go, oh, fuck, I want to write a chorus. And I think that's the way he is with endings. Similarly, when it comes to collaboration, I remember when Johnny first started sending me, and Greg's done it since, cover versions or remixes or adaptations of my songs that they've gone away and done themselves. The instinct in the first, because you listen to your stuff and you like your stuff so much, you listen to it and you're like, oh, I like the way that does, or I like the way that phrase pulls into there, or whatever. If you get very obsessive about it, not to say that I think outwardly or openly my stuff is good, but in my head I'm really happy with certain things that I've done on it. There is an instinct that when you hear someone else's interpretation of that you go, oh no, but you've missed the point because there was that pretty melody there, and what you've done is you've moved that over here, and you've done this big intro, and you've changed it, and you've put a dance beat under it, or you've distorted the guitar too much, or whatever. You've ruined it. There's an instinct to do that. And actually what's been really lovely over the last year and a half or 2 years of doing a bunch of musical collaborations is weaning myself off that impulse, that instinct to go, no, but it can't be a piano ballad. It has to be a thing. It has to be this because I wrote it like this. I've got to a point where I'm like, I don't give I'm not the best writer or the best arranger or the best musician or the best whatever in the group of people I'm with. And the only reason I'm talking about this is it's very, very similar to Stephen King and John Carpenter. Stephen King, as we found out last week, is clearly not the best filmmaker or even the best writer of Stephen King stuff. He just isn't. He's not the best screenwriter of Stephen King stuff. I don't think any of the Stephen King adaptations that people genuinely love are written by him. I would have to maybe check, but I don't think they are. I don't think Stand By Me is. I don't think Shawshank isn't. All the ones that people love of his stuff are not written by him.
Mr. Mercedes isn't.
And he clearly doesn't have the ability to step back from something and go, John Carpenter is a much better filmmaker than I am. So why don't I let John Carpenter make, Stanley Kubrick is a much better filmmaker than Stephen King. That's the point, isn't it? It's like, and again, I can understand this, right? Because for him, a story is a hard won thing, right? If all he did was sit on the desk, roiling on the sea, and throw out a book and then deliver that to his agent and then bugger off down the pub,
then he probably wouldn't give a shit what anybody does. But like, he has to pick that up and then wrestle it into a book and turn it into a book. And that's hard fucking work. And then it becomes about the story, right? And the story is very precious to him. And Kubrick doesn't give a shit about the story. And Carpenter doesn't give a shit about the story. It's about, you know, how does it make you feel? And how do I make a movie that feels that way, that captures that reaction? Like, there's no way Kubrick read The Shining and went, this is shit, I could do better. Kubrick read The Shining and went, this is ace, right? I reckon I can make an amazing movie with this idea, right? But it's not like I need to make sure that this like unbelievable story that should never, you know, it's like the Bible. Like, we can't mess with this story. It's like, fucking, who gives a shit about half of this bollocks can go, right? Because also we can't have like inside the character's head. So there's lots of things you have to do. You just like Carpenter does and like Kubrick does, you play to, like you're saying, you play to your strengths. And I think that's a really key point. And if you have to like look at Stephen King in the eye and go, Stanley Kubrick knows film better than you do. So a film adaptation of your book is going to be different if it's going to have any merit at all. If all anybody wanted was like the book, they would read the fucking book. It has to be different. It has to move people and scare people the way your book did, but only in a way that watching a 2-hour movie can. It's a completely different experience. Yeah. And you have to like pull different levers, right? And press different buttons to get, you know, inside people's heads and their subconscious to get those same feelings out. And Kubrick and Carpenter didn't know how to do that. Right, it's a different.
Well, because it's so funny because like Stephen King is Stephen King, right? You only have to say Stephen King, and everyone anywhere on Earth knows who you're talking about and what you're talking about and why you're talking about it. So, like, why pick fights, Stephen? Like, why not just be Stephen King? And when a movie comes out that's only going to sell more copies of your book, Stephen, like that's all it's going to do. Is it's not only that, Stephen, you get a payday when the movie comes out because it's a movie of your book, right? So you get a payday when they buy the rights to the book. You get a payday when the movie comes out, right? And more people buy the book because the movie came out, and the movie's going to live longer, which is going to keep the book living longer, and so on. It only benefits you, Stephen, to shut the fuck up and not go on tirades about how you don't like The Shining.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And in fact, all artists should probably just shut their cake holes, do their thing, and then walk the fuck away.
No, I'm just saying, if you're making the kind of money Stephen King is, and your books are being adapted by filmmakers of the caliber of Stanley Kubrick and John Carpenter, I'm saying, why muddy the waters coming out after it, saying I don't like it?
If I had to guess, I'd say it probably put his nose out of joint that at the time his work was considered like, you know, airport nonsense, right? It's only relatively recently that, because he did so many amazing stories and clearly scared the shit out of several generations, right, of Americans, and has become like, you know, a part of the American literary history, right? There's no doubt about it. But at the time, he was just like a paperback trash author, right, that sold shitloads of books, but they were horror books. Like John Grisham, right? Like John Grisham sold a shit ton of books. Dan Brown sold a shit ton of books.
James Patterson.
Fucking hell. His stuff is unreadably terrible. Stephen King is a great writer. James Patterson is one of the worst things I've ever read in my life. Anyway, just so bad. But
it says something that we never heard John Grisham.
For Stanley Kubrick to make an adaptation of his movies, what I'm saying, and people are like, this is art. This is one of the greatest movies ever made. This is Kubrick. What a genius, Kubrick. And Stephen King's like, hey, hang on. What about me? And so I think he's like, well, it's not as good as my book, is it? It's basically what he's saying. So when Kubrick's like, well, I've made a... Because Stephen King's like, well, it's just all long shots and pauses. I could do long shots and pauses, right?
Is that what he said?
That story. Where's the...
Is that what he said? Is that what he said?
Shining, eh?
Did he say that it's all long shots and pauses? Is that what he said? Is that
just... I can imagine he would, right?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, I can see how he would be miffed, having put in so much work into his, like, the mystical guardians of the Shining, or whatever the fuck bollocks it was all about, right? That nobody gives a shit about. that when it's all luxury,
you say nobody gives a shit.
Oh, the art! Look at the art of Kubrick. Oh, the art!
You say nobody gives a shit, but then Doctor Sleep comes out, and apparently everyone just had massive orgasms about Doctor Sleep, and I watched it.
I don't think they did.
No, honestly, they did, dude. Honestly,
they did. It's like it's fine, but it's not great.
It was awful. I hated Doctor Sleep.
I mean, I just thought it was like the only way to enjoy Stephen King adaptations, and like Mr. Mercedes season 2 is an example of this, is to watch them as Stephen King adaptations, and like the kinds of things that he's interested in, and the stories that he tells, and the places that he wants to go. And if you just do that, you'll be fine. But it's a very specific thing where it's like kind of real, but also kind of like fantastical and menacing, but also like slightly melodramatic almost in places. It's like it's a very specific place that he wants you to go that's hyper real, while being kind of like all taking place in a very like recognizable suburban, America. Anyway,
so what?
Yeah, so I'm just saying I can see why he was pissed off, because Kubrick was like, "Oh, what a genius! He's made like the horror film to end all horror films. Oh my god!" And then Stephen King's like, "Well, my book was better than that," is what he's saying. It was a pissing match between what is art, and he felt my book is better than that. He didn't even do it properly. How can you say that's art and my book isn't? I think is not necessarily he was saying that, but I think that's how he felt.
I still think it's because he starts the movie and within 5 minutes goes, "Oh no, they've done it all wrong. You're doing Bond like it's like Alan Partridge. You're doing Bond all wrong."
Yeah, stop doing Bond wrong. Yeah. Stop getting Bond wrong.
I think that's more the human angle.
Yeah, you're right. Stop getting King wrong. Probably yells
because that's why I brought up. I didn't bring it up just to talk about the music. I brought it up to kind of like try and put myself in that position, because there's definitely that initial feeling when you hear someone doing something you've done, or when when someone when you come across people who have been inspired by you to do their own thing, whether that's podcasting or music or whatever, and they kind of come up to you and kind of go, "Oh, listen to this is great," and you kind of listen to it, there's a little bit inside you where you're like, "Oh, this isn't very good," or there's a little bit inside you where you're like, "Oh, fuck it, it's really good." And there is that bit where you kind of you feel like there's that negative impulse to immediately assign some judgment to something based on your own internal bullshit. And what I've really tried really, really hard to do over the last few years is not do that. So that actually what you should do, I think, is put yourself into a position of joy and try and understand that someone took something you did and did their interpretation of it. And instead of being like, "Oh, they got it all wrong," what you should actually be like is, "No, their interpretation as it stands is really good because of X, Y, and Z," or whatever. And be more joyous about it and be more sharing about it. Now, I know someone listening to that rant is going to turn around and say, "Right, John, and all remakes are just interpretations of blah, 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 blah." But I reserve the right to be frustrated. Yeah, I reserve the right to be frustratingly, have some frustrating duality about myself, which on one hand is that I embrace people interpreting things and being wonderful and joyous and da-da-da-da. And on the other hand, I loathe anyone, especially either first-time filmmakers or second-time filmmakers, who go, "What I'm going to do is a remake," because fuck you, you shouldn't have a job, period. Anyway, that's a whole other subject. Back to Christine. So my favorite things about Christine are the things that I love about John Carpenter. So the shots, the widescreen, the sense of dread, the tension, the music, and the character actors in all the secondary and third roles, and his overriding. I think what makes Christine very interesting is Carpenter's Carpenter's cynicism about America matched with his love for, he was raised in the 50s. His big thing is 50s monster movies and 50s westerns, and like they're his, he is, Carpenter is of the era of Americana and certainly embraces it, and certainly has added to that history. If you look at his 80s movies, like if you want to say to someone like, what is 80s Americana? On one hand you have Back to the Future or whatever, but on the other hand you have something like, Big Trouble in Little China, or you have Christine, or you have Starman, or you have, Escape from New York or whatever. They're rich. They're rich with this idea of, America and Americana loom large in both Stephen King and John Carpenter's work. I would say that Stephen King is more at home with it and more cozy with it and more accepting of it, especially like we were talking last week about like, well, Hicks have guns in their basement, right? And King doesn't feel the need to explain that, because in King's reality, and like we said last week, probably in actual reality, way more than we would like to admit, Hicks wear truckers' caps, they swill beer, and they have guns in their basement. And to King, that isn't even a question. That just is what it is. Whereas I feel like Carpenter is more cynical about the power structure in America, and about Americana in general, and about the things that make up, whether it's 50s rose-tinted spectacle America, or whether it's Reaganomics and Reagan's America, which he was very much against. So I think it's interesting to see the clash of the two guys at work. I really do. And I love that about it. The shots in it are phenomenal. The stunts in it are great. The special effects with the car are fucking flawless. Even knowing how they did it, I still don't get how they did it.
When I was watching the movie, I was thinking, how the hell did it come? Because I was thinking, all right, I'm assuming it's like backwards, but how would you even do it forwards? That was my thing. How is this even happening forwards? I don't get how this is happening. It was so, and it wasn't like cartoony or like Harryhausen-y, like, no. You know what I mean? Like fighting the skeleton in Nightmare on Elm Street 3. It was like just like what he wants to be showing on the screen is really happening, as far as I can tell. Do you know what I mean? This is not a special effect. As far as I can tell, the car is coming back to life. I don't know how he's doing it.
Yes, it's phenomenal. And the last thing I would say about Christine is that it's one of the rare occasions where, not that he doesn't score it, but it's one of the rare occasions where Carpenter uses soundtrack, so music cuts, in a way that he doesn't really in his other movies. And he uses them very pointedly, very on the nose.
Yeah, they are very on the nose, aren't they? And not in a cheesy way.
But they work really, really, really well.
Because after a while, and I think there's that, again, it sort of grows throughout the movie, the sense that the radio is the voice of the car.
Yes.
Right? By using these songs to communicate, not just like, oh, it's time for some menace. Because the idea is like, look, if it's an evil fucking car and it's going to use songs as a way of like communicating, then it's going to know what the fuck it's doing. It's not just going to like pick anything. That's why there's like a weird menace about it.
And I think that I imagine Carpenter probably tore out pages of dialogue from the script, because where Christine threatens to get silly is when other people, so his girlfriend Alexandra Paul and his best friend, played by John Stockwell, they start to realize that it's not just him obsessed with Christine. It's like Christine is obsessed with him, and Christine is trying to kill her out of jealousy and kill his kill anyone who would come against him or bully him or trash his car or whatever. And it's very hard to write dialogue where someone's like, but your car's alive, without it just being stupid. You know what I mean? Without, and there's one scene in it where she says something about, this is what triggered it in my head, something about, and why does the radio only ever play those 50 songs? I would have been inclined to have even torn that line out. Like that was almost too on the nose. But I
agree. I suppose with trouble is when you're this again. I think the problem is when you're tearing out on the nose stuff. There's probably a fear, and a well-founded one, that if you tear everything out that's on the nose, you risk people missing the point. Right, or missing what you're trying to say. And it must be a hard balancing act of when it's a script full of noses, right? Yeah. When it's like brought in on the script writer's like balancing on his nose. It's
a script chock full of nasality.
Exactly, yeah. It's a nose-filled script that if you take everything out, you risk not talking about anything at all, and then you get those movies that are like, those like the art house movies from the like early 2000s, where it's like we say nothing, and but the things we're saying, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like write a script, pal. You can't just be like, it can't all be, long shots and pauses, right? It's got to be like something. So I think if you've got a script already and you're Carpenter and it's all about, let's just make the fucking thing, and let's make it good, then it's like, we'll leave some stuff in for the color and the like, just enough so that like dumb people get what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like that's got to be like, when you're making a Hollywood movie, there has to be an element of, we have to have enough in there so that dumb people know what we're doing, but not so much that smart people get annoyed. And that's like got to be a bit of a fine line when you're making a movie about an evil car.
No, completely. And I think
fine line with the evil car movies, I find.
I think you're right. He sprinkles enough throughout the script without, like I say, having the girlfriend and the best friend kind of go, we're talking about an evil car, right? Like you can't really.
That's what's interesting about the structure of the movie too, is that it's not all, and I'm pretty sure the book is all from the perspective of the guy, right? It's all like laser focused on the guy. What's interesting about the movie is it's actually starts like the first half hour is from the perspective of the best friend, actually, and it's more like his story, and the nerdy guy is his friend, and so that. It's a neat way of showing what happens to him without actually having to go through any kind of transformation, right? Because actually he goes from nerd to like something's like happened to this guy. He's like a bit of a, he's cool, but also a bit like dark and weird. And there's no transition. It's just, he's gone from one to the other. So by having it start with like, from the best friend's point of view, like seeing this thing happen to this guy, and then he's totally taken out of the movie, like 40 minutes in, and then it's all laser focused on like the guy who owns the car and him fixing up and going through that, like his journey, and then at the end it goes back to the best friend trying to rescue him again, so that like Carpenter can have the ending that he needs. But that way of like shifting focus in order to tell basically the story of the car, right, which is actually what it's about. It's not really about the best friend. It's not even really about the guy in the end, which it very much is in like the Stephen King book. It's about like the fate of this guy and what happens to him and how he allows himself to be taken over and all the rest of it. That it really becomes about the car. And so the way he chooses to like tell it through those two different perspectives, it's a really smart and economical way of telling that story that does shy away from ridiculousness, because it's about people's, like, it's these little stories around the car, not about like, let's tell the story of the car.
Well, that's what's good, is that in the end, instead of having the conversation about, I think this is a sentient car, right. They have the conversation about, I'm worried about Arnie, like we need to save Arnie. And they make it about like, well, our best friend has become corrupted and we need to save our best friend. I think the only place it would get tricky these days is because it's Christine, because obviously, and they even admit it as much, Keith Gordon and John Carpenter did a lot of work to sexualize the car. So Keith Gordon treated his actor's trick or whatever was to think of the car as a woman. So when he touches her, he touches Christine in a very sexual way on purpose. And then there's the sequence that is brilliantly done, but clearly set up to be like a striptease sequence, which is when he realizes Christine can fix herself. And he goes and stands in the spotlight and says, "Show me what you've got," or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's that little like subtle saxophone, like bah, 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 like when she's putting herself back together, which is awesome. I get that. The only thing is you then kind of go, well, wait, are they saying like women are ultimately corruptible to men? Like once you start kind of, if you make that the whole allegory, right? If you say that it's about like the evil woman that will lead you astray from the good, pure woman who doesn't want to make out in your car at a drive-in or whatever. Like if you look at it that way, it's a little.
I think it's probably more the other way around, right? Which is, I think it's less about women and more about men, in that men's ability to turn, like, frankly, like toxic sexual desire into all manner of different places, right?
Yes.
Like, or if the recent world has taught us anything, it's that so much power is attained not for the sake of attaining power, but because there's toxic, misplaced sexual desire that's turned into like a lust for power. So I feel like Christine is less about an allegory about women who are corrupting and more about the inherent corruption of misplaced male sexual desire. That if it gets fixated on something that isn't just a woman, it can become corrupting and to the person and to the people around them, and the thing itself, whatever it is. And it doesn't need to be like an object either. It can be like power, right? Like a job or anything, right? That infusing that thing with your confusing that thing, whether it's like a position of power or whatever it is, it could be an object, but whatever it is, taking that toxic sexual desire and putting it into that thing is an inherently it's not going to end well. I'll put it that way.
No,
you know what I mean?
and yeah, I'm not saying. What I'm saying is that in order to say all of those things and in order to do all of those things, but also in order to not make this a movie about their friends finding out that there is an evil car, but rather, I think the screenwriter, and then by extension Carpenter and Gordon, who decide to sexualize the car for their own reasons, I think the screenwriter wrote it as, I'm going to pretend Christine is an evil woman and Alexandra Paul is a good woman, and it's going to be about a guy whose friends all wish that he wasn't fooling around on his woman with this, evil tramp or whatever. But he is, and it's corrupting him, and it's making him a monster.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
And I'm not saying that that's the way you should watch it, and I'm not saying that that's what Carpenter necessarily intends, and I'm not even saying that that's the best reading of it. I'm just saying the way it's written and the way that people behave, and the fact that it's so obviously, what's the word? Feminized? I don't know what the word is. Made female or made feminized, whatever the word is. In the film, as a writer's trick, he might have just been like, I'm going to write this story this way, but I'm going to replace a woman or an evil woman. Or
no, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think that's
the car. That's what I mean. But what Carpenter does to remove that is that he brings in the other trick that he brings in from his slasher days or his horror days of The Fog and Halloween is there's basically the sequence, which is, it's not slap bang in the middle of the movie. It's kind of the second act and the beginning of the third act, which is essentially the Christine kills the bullies sequences. Like they're one after the other, after the other, after the other. And they're all, he does a trick that I can't imagine anyone else doing. Except maybe like the montages in Rocky IV. And that is being able to string together set piece after set piece after set piece after set piece without really much conjoining material. Like he sets up the world, he sets up Christine. I guess he intersperses it with, like you said, the relationships, right? So the relationship between the man and the car, the relationship between the man and his friend, the relationship between the man and the woman. That's sprinkled throughout, but it's really like set piece, set piece, set piece, set piece. And the fact that each one is a fascinating set piece, and the fact that each one is, tops the last one is kind of an incredible trick. And it's sort of like in Rocky IV when you're watching the fourth montage with the fourth 80s power ballad, and you're like, is Stallone really pulling off like 4 montages in a row? I guess he is. The last thing I would say is that in 80s movies there was a trope that in the buddy cop films, or in any kind of film where there's like buddies or mixed match pairs of guys or whatever, one of the guys would always have a car that he liked. It didn't necessarily have to be a nice car, but it was a car that he liked.
Yeah.
And you knew that halfway through the second act, that car would get wrecked. There would be a car chase, or there would be the
door gets torn off.
Right. Something would happen so that during the car chase, his partner, who's reckless, is driving the car because he finally got in the car because they're chasing the bad guys, while his partner, who loves his car, is in the passenger seat. And every time there's a ding on the car or the door flies off, he's like, "No, my beautiful car," or whatever, right? And what's incredible is just how much seeming fun Carpenter has in just being like, I'm going to make you watch me destroy a classic car over and over and over and over again.
In the back of my mind was like, I wonder how many Plymouths they wrecked making this movie. It must have been a few.
Yeah, they
right?
I think they had about 6 or 7, I think. And what's funny is like some didn't even go. Like some would just, for shots where they would like tear up the seats or whatever. And then there was stunt car versions of them. Then there was one that they weirdly did in the sequence where Gordon is going a bit nuts and Stockwell is getting scared, and they're driving along and he's like preaching about Christine or whatever, which is another really good sequence. They filmed some of it for some reason on a truck with like almost like forklift prongs out the front, and then the chassis, but not the whole car. So instead of doing it on a flatbed, which is how you would normally film this stuff, they did it this weird thing where they ripped the wheels and the base of the car off and just had the chassis and the seats and everything sat on like these 2 prongs while a truck like drove it along. And Keith Gordon describes it in the making of. He's like, I was absolutely fucking terrified, because if anything, it's not like I could press brake on the car or do anything, control the car. Like the car's being controlled by some guy in a truck behind me. I think it was on the front of like a big rig. Like I think it was on the front of like a fucking Mack truck or whatever. And they were driving down the street with this like flimsy chassis trying to act. And he's like, balls to this. So that's why they then took it into the studio and did it like poor man's process in a studio. But I could there's some great behind the scenes footage of them like driving along in the chassis of this thing with this fucking Mack truck behind them, and him being absolutely petrified.
That's good.
I love stuff like that. But yeah, I mean overall it's weirdly, I've seen it a lot recently. I've seen it probably every year in the last like 4 or 5 years, and it's a good one to kind of put on. But it's certainly not my favorite Carpenter, but it is as good as it is because of Carpenter's decisions and no one else's. It's not because of Stephen King's decisions. It's not because of the scriptwriter's decisions. It's not because of the producer's decisions. It is as good a movie as it is because of John Carpenter's decisions. And normally I'm the guy to say you need to have a good script or your movie's fucked. Doesn't matter who's directing it. This is one of the few cases I can think of where most things about the movie are fucked, but Carpenter somehow makes it a 7 out of 10 movie.
Yeah, I think I'd go along with that. I mean, I think that the idea of the evil car, the most evil thing the car does is corrupting its owner.
Yeah,
is the Stephen King idea, and I think that if anybody else wrote the script, it would just be an evil car that killed people, and like the guy owning it would be an innocent or evil or something, right? But it would be about the things the car did. It would be the focus. But I think the real horror of the book is what the car does to the kid, right? That's the real horror. And then when the car kills people, it's like the kid's gone too far. The kid is beyond redemption. It's like it's what the car does to the kid that's most affecting, not even the people that it murders, right? So that part of it is definitely King, and I think that's the creepy part of the story.
Yes,
notion of being changed, right?
Although what Carpenter does with that's different is that once Christine starts driving around and doing the things they're doing, you're not meant to know which sequences was he in the car and which sequences was
no, which I agree. Which I still.
And what's interesting is that the twist, the shock of the end, is that he is finally in the car. So Arnie Cunningham is finally in the car and is trying to run down his friend. Like he has become the malevolent. Whereas earlier he's not in the car. Like he couldn't be in the car when it was on fire, and he couldn't be in the car when it crushes the fat kid down the alleyway or whatever, because he would get crushed in the car. But the final twist of the movie is he has become so obsessed with Christine and so a part of wanting to keep that the only relationship in his life that he is willing to kill his best friend and his girlfriend, even though it ultimately leads to his demise.
No, I'd agree with that. I guess what I'm saying is I agree with you up to a point, but I think that the story is not as. I think what I admire about what Carpenter did with it is he got to the heart.
I don't mean to say King. I don't mean to say King doesn't have anything to do with it. You're right. I'm wrong there. Of course, King has something to do with it. I just mean in the film adaptation, if there's anything I love about the movie, like 98% of it is coming from John Carpenter.
Which I agree with. I agree in the making of the film. When you consider that all they did was like adapt a book, right? Doesn't matter who wrote the book. It's like the screenwriter, like you're saying, the screenwriter, the producer, like the people that actually put the movie together. It's only good because of Carpenter. I would agree with that.
And the biggest change I would make is I would get rid of the swearing in the first 2/3 of the movie and bring it in at the end once he's being corrupted. It just doesn't make any sense in the early half of the movie at all.
No, I'd agree with that.
It's just grating and annoying. And lastly, what I like about the two movies is we've weirdly done this is how not to do a story about murderous vehicles, and here is how to do a story of murderous vehicles.
I agree. Yeah, in fact, we've covered all the bases of movies about murderous vehicles.
This is the collective. This is the angel and devil on the shoulders of murderous car movies. The other murderous car movie that I would strongly recommend is the imaginatively titled The Car, which is actually really, really good with James Brolin in it.
Oh, okay. Well, we could watch that. I've never seen it.
No, it's not got Emilio Estevez or Stephen King in it. I'm far more interested in Repo.
So you're more interested in it being a King and Estevez season, not a murderous vehicle season.
No, I like that we found an Estevez movie that has Harry Dean Stanton in it and a car, and it ties together nicely.
Yeah, you're right. No, I'm really looking forward to watching Reef Man because I've never seen it.
Yeah, great. So that's it. That was John Carpenter's Christine.
Thanks for having me, man.
I think we did that pretty well. I think we dissected it.
Great. It was perfect. It took a while to get going, but then that's our style.
Yes, indeed. And I'm very tired, and it's been a long day. and it's only getting later by the minute. So I really have to wrap this up and say goodbye.
No, me too, man. Me too. Listen, that was lovely. Brilliant as always.
Thanks ever so much, Brad. I needed that.